If you're just starting out in your software development career, you might be wondering, are there any things I need to worry about that other people might tell me about my career that really aren't true? Or if you've been developing software for a while, you might be frustrated in your career like I was and try to figure out what's really going wrong. So in this video, I want to give you some tips about the 5 biggest lies that I've been told and many others are in the software industry right after this. Hi, I'm Jamie Edwards, and at Healthy Software Developer, I want to help you have a sustainable career in software so you don't get burned out, you don't get pushed around by people who don't really understand software development, and you can just get back to having a great career. When I first started developing software over 20 years ago, I was really excited about technology, working with many different people, and getting the opportunity to learn how to use programming languages, tools, how processes worked. But the more years I worked in the industry, I really started to realize that there was something wrong about how I was going about developing software. And when I looked at everybody else at most of the companies that I worked at, they kind of looked at it the same way that I did, and it felt like something was missing or wrong. So in this video, I'm going to give you 5 lies that the software industry, I think, tells many of us about ourselves and about our careers, that if you can avoid these lies and just refuse what people tell you about them, I hope it'll help you be much more happy in your career. So the first lie is that your technical skills are going to determine your success. While during the interviewing process at most companies, the thing a lot of interviewers like to focus on is whether you know the programming language or the tech stack or whatever discipline they're using. I've been in many situations at companies where we hire somebody onto our team and they pass the technical interview with flying colors, but they're basically a complete jerk to work with. And it doesn't matter how great they are at the technology. If nobody wants to work with them, if they don't know how to communicate well, and if they basically piss off management, they're not going to last very long. So it's very important if you want to get into software development that you don't buy the lie that just being really smart or really intellectually ahead of everybody else with the technology is what's going to create success. You have to care about other people and being able to communicate and interact with them well too. The second lie is that harder work gets more done. It's so common in this industry in software development that many of us will drink several cups of coffee throughout the day to keep us amped up and have a lot of energy. And we might compare one day how productive we feel we were to another based on how many lines of code we wrote. But you can write 15 lines of code that do the same thing as several thousand lines of code, depending on how you structure it and write it and think about it. And there's also code you can write that's easier for other people to understand or harder for other people to understand. And in my experience, the best software developers that I come across are the ones who are the most creative. And creativity tends to take being calm and having a clear mind about something when you're going about doing it. So one of the big lies in our industry is that to be a good software developer, you got to stay up late or you got to jack yourself up with stimulants and you got to just crank out tons of lines of code. This lie is absolutely not true. If you have healthy boundaries you set for yourself in your career and you learn to just think through a problem at a calm pace and come up with the exact right solution, you can actually save yourself a lot of time and produce more for the company that you work for when you come up with the most creative and really ultimately best solution without rushing yourself. The third lie that many people buy about the software industry through pressure and just the way many companies are managed is that past success with people determines future results. What I mean by this is that many people are successful on one project for one company and they go to another company and they are not successful because they look at that new company and its tech stack and its problems and its people as though they were the same as the first problem. And this is just something that I had to learn the hard way through consulting. When I was in consulting the last decade, I worked with about 20 different companies, over 20 different companies. And when you go from company to company to company and develop software, you really learn. You can take, a stack like Ruby on Rails or Node.js or, something written in C# or Java, and you can solve a problem at one company and go to another company and try to use that same set of patterns, and it just doesn't work. And you can also take a development process, something like Scrum or Kanban or DevOps, and try to get it working at one company and then go to another company and try to use it the same way, and it just won't work because of the people and the personalities. So one of the big lies that you need to be careful for is that you become overly confident that just because something worked in one situation, it's going to always work in others. And this is a difficult lesson because many people just don't realize this, and especially when hiring managers and recruiters are bringing people into new companies, they think just because somebody has used the list of all the same technologies maybe that they want, that they're using on their product, that they're going to be the right fit for that project or for that team. And every person looks at things differently. Everybody thinks about how to solve problems with technology differently. They come from different backgrounds. They communicate differently. So the better job you can do to just be open that everybody is going to be different when we develop software will avoid you from buying into this lie. The fourth lie that I often hear told in our industry is that bigger companies have better practices. So if you go on to many subreddits that talk about people's careers and things like that in the software industry, there's a lot of people trying to get jobs at the big four, the big software company names that most of you have heard of. And there's a lot of money that people can often make to get into these companies as their first job. But the thing that they often also are sold on or think is, well, because these companies are so big and they have such a large market and so many products, we're going to deal with scaling problems. In other words, economies of scale, so many users using the system, so much processing power being used that we're going to learn things that we would never learn anywhere else. And while that's true that working at one of the big fours is going to give you some really great technology opportunities, and that might be exactly what you're looking for. In my experience of working with very large software companies, not the big four, but big companies that you also would know the name of, one of the biggest challenges is not the scaling of the technology, it's actually the scaling of the people. The more people that you have working for a company, the easier it is for people. I've worked at companies where there's somebody who's been there for a year and nobody even really knows what they're doing. I mean, this is, you could call this an organizational dysfunction, but I think one of the things you just need to be careful for is if you choose to join a large company, to not have the rose-colored glasses sort of on, that just because you're making a lot of money and they have big technical scaling problems, that's going to actually be the best learning ground for you. And the biggest thing you might need to watch out for is the fact that most of these big companies, because they're either publicly traded or they have a lot of investors, they don't care about the toil to their employees so much, meaning the working conditions, how overworked people are, is less important than making investors happy. And these bigger companies will often acquire a whole bunch of smaller companies to try to integrate their technology, and they create these giant messes of a whole bunch of technology challenges just to continue to grow and profit at a scale that looks great on Wall Street, but might not be right for your career. And the fifth lie that the software industry, especially employers, often tell, and we see this on LinkedIn, we see this in articles when people talk to you about your career growth, is that promotions are proportional. And what I mean by that is if you've been developing software, let's say you're making about $120,000 a year doing Node.js work or something, or you're doing React on the front end or something like that, and you're working at a company and you really feel like, wow, this is great money, but you want to get promoted. You want to become, a senior developer or a lead developer, an architect. And again, depending on the company you work at and the city or state or country you work in, what you make is going to vary a lot, right? But in my career, and I've experienced this many times, and I also have had many people I've worked with that have experienced this, Often, if you decide to take a promotion, you're really only going to get a bump. Let's say you get an extra $10,000 or maybe even $20,000 to take a big promotion. Well, you have to look at the percentage extra that is on top of the large salary you're already making, and then also look at how many extra responsibilities you're going to take on. And I find many software developers that are great with technology, but they really don't like working with other people and they haven't developed their communications or soft skills. They are not good leaders. And so they often sometimes will take these promotions and make a little bit more money. Again, $10,000 or $20,000 might sound like a lot of money, but proportionally it's not. And then they're frustrated because their job's way harder. They have less energy. They feel burned out and stressed out because they're trying to deal with people and they don't really like that. So if you're someone who's looking for advancement in your career, be careful that you don't choose to take a promotion that has way more responsibilities for not that much more money, unless you really want to do the things that that new promotion takes and you want to grow. And I can say I've done this sometimes in my career where it's been a good choice that I took the promotion, and there's been other times it's been a really poor choice. So this tip I'm giving you about a lie to avoid, it is very contextual and it does depend a lot about the company you work for and what the situation is, but it's something that I think many of us in software development, we just don't think about enough. So are you able to see through the lies of the software industry? Do you believe that you can make healthy decisions about your career so that you don't get swept up in what other people are doing? Leave me some comments below. If you're new to my YouTube channel, please subscribe. You can click the bell icon and you'll actually be notified when I release new videos. You can also listen to this instead as a podcast. I'm on Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and iTunes, and you can like me on Facebook. So until next time, thanks.